Yo, what's up guys? Gavin here, and I'm just here with Cameron Gallagher, who is a master with things like neuro-linguistic programming, rewiring your mind, kind of into the performance psychology side of things, which, as people who have followed this channel for long enough know, I believe that mindset is like 99% of the game. If you get the thinking right, everything else follows. It's like, it's the cause, and then you get the effect you want automatically because of the way you're thinking. So I'm super excited to have you on and share with the audience all of these different ways we can upgrade our thinking and rewire the things of our past that have been holding us back. So guys, we're gonna get right into this just right after this. All right guys, so we're back, and I actually just want to dive right in to what got you into like being so interested in upgrading the mind and having this like idea that we can actually increase our performance by increasing the way we think.
Oh yeah, man.
What got you into this?
Okay, well, it's basically what you said, right? I, at some point, was sitting in front of a computer and I was just bored out of my mind. I was in a corporate job, and I was like, why can't I get myself to do this stuff? And then I realized, oh, everything must be coming. After a while of thinking about it, I was like, everything has to be coming from here. Like everything that's either coming out of me or not has got to be coming from in here. So I just became obsessed. I was like, how do you get stuff to come out of you that you want to come out of you, right? Because so many people struggle with, what do I do? How do I do it? How does that come out of you? I wanted to know. Yeah. And that was like 10 years later.
Yeah, it's so crazy because how much of the time do you hear something from someone like, I just can never remember names, right? Or I just can't get myself to do this, or I couldn't do that. And it's stemming from this place of just not understanding how their mind works in the first place. It's like an unknown, so they just assume that it just doesn't exist. Totally. Which is crazy, because if they were to just peel back a few layers of the onion, they'd be like, holy crap, like all of this is actually an illusion that I thought was holding me back, but it's not actually real. So how does someone like yourself, like when you're in these situations where you can't do something, can't figure something out, what is it that you're studying or learning, or how do you learn how to break those barriers? Because that's actually most of what happens with the people that I talk to. They know their goals, they know they want an awesome life, but something's holding them back. So it's not actually the dreams and visions they have usually, it's the things that are actually holding them back in the first place.
Totally. All right, so the first thing, I think there are two major things that are really important. The first is ecology, and the second is there's 4 pillars that all intersect with each other that create the illusion that you're talking about, which is ultimately someone's identity and their perception of reality. Okay, so the first thing is ecology. So you've got 3 domains of ecology. You've got your physical environment, you've got your social environment, and then you've got a third domain of ecology, which is your internal environment, right? And so that internal environment has 2 components. It's your body and also everything that's occurring inside. Now, for most people, that is a mysterious world, right? They don't understand it, they don't know anything about it, and they definitely don't understand the correlation between what's occurring here and what's occurring out there. One of the reasons why I love what you teach is because you are so passionate about, you've got to start here, and when you really understand what that means and you get it, then you're able to influence out here directly by working on here. Once you understand that, you realize the importance of doing that, and then you begin to go deeper into it and really work on it. So you have the ecologies and then the 4 pillars. So the 4 pillars are psychology, history, philosophy, and physiology. And all these 4 pillars interact with each other. So for example, if somebody has an experience earlier in their past, like we call them significant emotional events that are typically traumatic, and they basically create a significant emotional aversion or attachment, basically like a rod in your personality. So then when you go further in your life, let's say somebody was embarrassed when they were in high school, like they had this one moment and they got super embarrassed, maybe they shat their pants or something, and like a lot of people laughed at them. And in that moment they form a really strong belief which becomes completely subconscious, and their personality actually adapts around it. So now, 5 years down the track, 10 years down the track, someone brings an opportunity to them. They say, hey, you could create this business and you've got to do, here's exactly how you do it, right? And this is why you're here. You have 2 people that get the same plan, but one makes it work and the other one doesn't. And it's like, this person, they can't put themselves, they can't actually see themselves, their internal sense of identity, they can't put it in the future and see them in that reality, because they had this earlier experience, which means they have this deep subconscious belief, I'm not good enough, I'm humiliated, I'm embarrassment, I can't be this person in social situation. And to make that work, They would have to become that person. So now you're faced with an invisible enemy. On one side, your subconscious is saying, you are not that. On the other side, your mind is saying, I want to become that. But the problem is you have to be, then do, then have. It doesn't work the other way around. And so you've got to learn how to actually break down those walls, get that identity first, and then you can start showing up. The secret's in the ecology, and the secret is in those 4 pillars.
That's some mind-blowing stuff right there and then, because at the end of the day, the foundation is where where all the magic happens. So the reason why I'll listen to the same book over and over and over and over, where somebody else might listen to that book and say, I know that. It's because if you think you know, but you're not doing, you don't know, right? So if someone's like, oh, I know how to do that. Oh, I've read Think and Grow Rich. I've done this. But they're not doing the actions that they know they need to be doing, then they don't actually know it because something in their identity is holding them back. And that's like the, you know, the basic story of the elephant that gets the rope tied around its leg as a baby and then stake in the ground,
100%.
Grows up learning that it can't pull this thing, even though it could. It just has this belief that it can't, right? And then again with the process, it's like you don't bake the cake and then put the flour in it, you know? There's process to this too. So can you talk a little bit more about this process, like the be, do, have, because I love everything you were saying, but really at the end of the day, it's like one step at a time. This universe works on very specific laws, which is amazing. Like if I go to McDonald's every day and don't exercise, I'm pretty sure what's going to happen. Same with if I exercise and eat pretty healthy, I'm pretty sure what's going to happen. So we have these laws. So what are some of these laws of psychology, this be, do, have, of why it has to work that way?
Yeah, fantastic, man. So there's a lot, and but when you get really simple down, I think again, bring it back to the 4 pillars, right? So the first main law is identity, the law of identity. How you see yourself, it's what you will create, period. So the best example, there's so many great examples, but say Conrad Hilton, the guy who built Hilton Hotels, and someone asked him once, he said, so what was it like to be a bellboy at a hotel? He said, I was never a bellboy. Said, what do you mean? It's like, I was always the owner of a chain of hotels, right? And so we've had this conversation, and it's like, the people that become successful, they were always the champion of the world in their mind. So they had the identity, and it wasn't a fiction. They truly got themselves to the place where they bought into that. And this is where we come into rituals.
That's a great thing, buy-in.
So you've got to get the buy-in, and this is where we get to rituals. So we're talking about the designing, custom designing an ecosystem so that you take that identity and anchor it in and anchor it in and anchor it in, because your brain, like your body, becomes conditioned. And if you've been conditioned a certain way for 20-something years, 30-something years, 50 years, then you have to ultimately recondition your psychology. Now, change can happen really fast once you get an understanding of the 4 pillars. At the same time, we still have to be conditioning because reality shows up, it challenges the identity has to meet and then overcome it. So what we want to do is understanding those 4 pillars, right? Again, it's like your ecosystem comes back to what is your history? What is your philosophy on life? How is your physiology? And then what are the thoughts running through your head, your psychology? And each of those interact with each other. Whenever you make a change to any of them, it changes all of them. So when you want to understand how can you start to intervene on yourself, which is really what I want you to be able to do and take away from this, how do you intervene on yourself? Understand those 4 pillars. Understand that if you change your physiology, like you get fit, you start showing up to the gym, you train like an animal, you tap that primal part of yourself, you're going to find another type of thought running through your head as opposed to the same thoughts that were running before. It's the same thing with if you change your history. If you've seen yourself as a failure for 20-something years and it was because of this one event, if you go back and you let go of that event, whether you write about it or you journal about it, or whether you go and actually use some NLP techniques and you actually release the belief system and the meaning you added to that, now your identity changes. Now your history's different. Now you might have a different philosophy on the world. Before you're like, you know, oh, I'm timid, I don't want to go after it. Then you change it and now suddenly your philosophy's different. You're like, fuck that, man, I've got to go for this, right? One of the biggest moments in my life was when my dad died. That changed my philosophy right there. Significant emotional event, plowed straight through my philosophy. Changed it permanently, which changed all these other things. I needed new thoughts to go along with the new philosophy. So the 4 pillars hold the key for you to really begin to understand, who am I? Okay, my history pillar is impacting that. What are the elements of my history I'm not complete with? What am I still holding on to? What are actually I'm still allowing to define me, that if I keep allowing to define me, they're going to define me till the day I die. And then ask yourself, because I'm letting those things define me, how is that impacting how I think today, my psychology pillar? And then how have over time, the thoughts that I run through my head become my philosophy on life, my entire viewpoint of the whole way the solar system, the universe
the
works.
lenses that you see the world through.
That's right. You say, like, you talk about the universe has specific principles. Well, if it has specific principles and laws that you use to get results, that means there are specific philosophies that allow you to use those laws better. So you want to build philosophies that actually allow you to use those laws better. And then if you've got your psychology, your philosophy, and your history dialed in, and your physiology, and you're up leveling those things, you're putting in higher quality history every day with new experiences, your identity becomes supported. And then when you build an ecosystem around it, it becomes solid. Because the problem is, what do people always say? They say that I can get momentum for a little bit, then it stops. I go to a seminar and then I can't keep it. I go to it, and it's because the ecology is wrong. So the ecology and these 4 pillars are they're not supporting the outcome, right? Here in Bali, totally different. Complete ecology, the whole thing is dialed in. So all of these elements, physical, history, psychology, philosophy, and all of the ecologies around, physical environment, psychological environment, and social environment. They're all dialed in. They support the outcome. So it all comes back to those pillars and the idea of ecology.
And like everything you're saying is so powerful because it stems from the truth of why we take the actions and behaviors that we take. Because at the end of the day, if someone gives you a roadmap, here's the how-to, here's how to build the business. Like you said, one person will take that because their psychology's right. Boom. Their identity of who they believe they are is on point. So boom, easy.
100%.
Then the other person, you give them the exact plan. All they have to do is A, B, and C, and they say something, which is what Wyatt Woodsmall says. It's like, I would do that, but that wouldn't be me. They literally say the word, that wouldn't be me. It's like, of course. Because that's what change is about, becoming not you, which means you have to see in the future or see who that person is that would get that, and then start to condition yourself to become that person, 100%. And then automatically the results follow.
100%. And the key words there are conditioning. That's the key most important thing there is the idea of conditioning and this idea of breaking the habit of becoming yourself. So you want to ritualize. I believe really heavily in rituals, right? So you only have 7 days. Everyone has 7 days. Everyone has the same. They wake up in the morning, they go to sleep at night, and what's done in the meantime is what makes a difference, right? Now, obviously, when you're starting out, you don't have that many skills, and you don't have like a great connection to a great environment. Your leverage on your activities isn't going to be as good. As you get more skills, though, you get better at that. However, the thing is, what you do have control over, even if you're just starting out, is you have control over your rituals. So you have control over the ability to define and set up an ecosystem around you as best as you can to consistently pull out of you the identity that you need to pull out of you. Because what happens, what I've observed, Gavin, is that in the middle of the day, an entrepreneur will lose confidence. So they will get a point in the middle of the day where like they're in the middle of doing something and their psychology starts knocking. It's the, hey, this isn't you. Hey, this isn't you. Hey, guess what? This isn't what you do, right? And what happens when that happens? Well, for most people, they get completely derailed. Their emotional system goes crazy. Their history starts playing up again. Their psychology gets affected and their whole physiology freezes up. And so now that task that they could do if they were not under any pressure, they suddenly feel like there's no way I can do it because internally it's what we call the rudders are not aligned with the paddles. So in other words, they're trying to pull the kayak, but the rudder is off this way, so they're going to go round in circles. And so what we've got to have, I've found that the best possible thing you can do is to set up specific rituals that get into your psychology. And I use anchoring. So you're talking about neuro-linguistic programming and talking about anchoring. So if your state is what determines what comes out of you, and typically your identity is what you know about yourself on a consistent basis. Well, if you're just edging onto that brand new part of yourself and you need to show up right now to pull that out of you, then sometimes what happens is the environment or your state happens to collapse. That you meet a challenge and you're overwhelmed by it and you're not used to being resourceful in that moment, and so it overwhelms you. And when it overwhelms you, you stop and then it reinforces the old identity. So we want to break that pattern. So I found it really helpful to set up anchoring systems, which are essentially strategies that you run inside your mind, which combine of self-talk, focus, and a specific physiological way that you operate your body. And then you link certain music or you link triggers to those specific things so that right when you need it, you're like, okay, I'm out of state, I need to get back into state. And you ritualize the process of returning to certainty. Because if you don't return to certainty, your uncertainty will collapse the action, and it will actually essentially collapse life and the universe into this experience. It's entropy. It collapses in on itself. So you're trying to express typically beyond the boundaries of an ecosystem. That's what a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to do, and they're the ecosystem of their identity, the ecosystem of their social reality, the social agreements that they've got of who they are. Because remember, I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. And that's a crazy statement, but that's how we process social reality.
And the craziest part about that is probably the thing that holds most people back more than anything.
I agree.
Because if you are surrounded by people who think you are something, or who you think they think you think, or whatever it is, right? If you're in that, then if you step outside of that, people are like, "What's going on with you today?
That's the worst
Cameron,
thing.
what's going on?
100%.
You seem a little off. Like, you know, maybe you shouldn't go after that business. That's not like you. That's not like, you know." So from all angles, you're being told that's not who you are, which means that's what your belief turns into. So to break free from that,
it's unconscious, and it's your limbic system that activates. So your limbic system is deep down inside the brain. It's way older than your frontal cortex. So your desires and your future decision making and everything you're making plans for is up here, but your limbic system hijacks it. So then when other people come around and they say you're not that, your limbic system goes, "Dude, are you fucking with the tribe? Don't screw with the tribe." That's right next to the tribe. Screwing with the tribe is right next to screwing with survival. So in the brain, they're neighbors. And so basically this guy goes, hey, they're screwing with the tribe. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Your soldier comes up and he goes, whoa, 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 I'm here to keep you safe. I'm gonna stop you from screwing with the tribe. And so now your own brain's your enemy. That's a problem. So we have to learn how to anchor the parts of ourselves, because everybody has different parts of ourselves. There are parts of ourselves that are courageous and have balls, they've got guts, they can show up even when they're scared, right? And then there are other parts of ourselves, the same self, but they're different parts that are like, they're timid, they're intimidated, they're shy, they don't feel like showing up. And so you have to learn how to identify the parts of yourself that will show up and pull them out of you, and then over time condition it so that it's more natural for you to be there than it is for you to be there. And as you do that, your identity grows. As you snap those rubber bands, your identity continues to expand. I've got so many examples of guys that have learned how to do this, especially through a process like I call emotional supercharging, which is where we take the parts, take the pieces that are deeply important, and you use the emotion to literally rewire the brain. So if I was to ask you, essentially, if we take those 4 pillars, we can find inside of the pillars of any human being very specific triggers. Triggers which are moments where we can generate radically larger amounts of fuel from those moments than we can from almost any other. And so if you go through someone's world, you'll find that, say, for example, at 15 they had this experience, or at 17 they had this experience, or at 22 they had this experience. And if we start to link these experiences together into a cohesive idea of who this person needs to be now and in the future, we can supercharge the emotion. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who I worked with last year who was stuck in a job earning $6,000 a month. 8 months ago, I'll tell you where he got to, but he basically, what we did is we sat down and he couldn't get out of it. He couldn't get the escape velocity, and he knew he was drowning in that role. He's like, I don't want to be here for the rest of my life. Guy has a daughter. So we basically build this trigger system where essentially unconsciously we set up this system where we create very specific imagery. So in NLP, it's all about creating imagery. And I learned from this neuroscientist that we could create specific enough imagery to hijack the limbic system, literally surgically. So you can take the very precise imagery, build it into a sequence, and hijack the limbic system, because you're basically giving it something really intense that it has to pay attention to. It has no choice. Just like if you're a guy, you see a beautiful woman walking down the street, you don't choose, your brain just goes, mating opportunity.
Well, that's the whole Matrix, the girl in the red dress.
That's the whole Matrix. So we can do that with other things. Everybody has a blueprint, and if we get inside the blueprint, what we can do is we can actually design your own personal blueprint to engineer it to create a trigger system to bring it out. So what we did with this guy is we created a couple of images. The first thing was one of his daughter. Very clear image, very precise, seeing his daughter at the beautiful, like 8 years old or whatever that she was, his oldest daughter. Then we contrasted that with the possibility that if he did not show up to create the change he wanted to create in the world and be the leader he wanted to be, we would create a different future. And so we created this alternative future image of him having not shown up. And now what would happen is we linked these things together along with one really important ingredient. a movie of him showing up. Now, what most people are doing are playing movies. Their psychology gets triggered, and they play movies of themselves failing. They play movies of themselves in the past, projected into the future. It's the same self, and they can't get new results. And so what we did was we created a movie to link the two together. And so now what we had was he had a trigger system. Whenever he thought of his daughter, he was able to bring himself. This is a guy who said he never cried in his entire life as an adult. Didn't even cry at his wedding or at his children's birth. He was crying every day because in this ritual that I created for him, he would literally get so tapped into the possibility of creating the world that he really wanted to see for his daughter. It was so moving to him that when he tapped into it, he literally would cry like a baby. And that emotion would fuel him to go and show up. He sent me a message like 6 or 7 months later and said that he'd just done a $10,000 day in his business. This was a guy who was stuck in a job doing $6,000 a month. And so this stuff, if you get it right, if you learn how to hijack your own brain and you learn how to rewire it, you understand these pillars, you can create really profound change, especially if there's an identity that we can pull inside of you that you know you fucking are, but you're not bringing it out. So we want to systemize that.
So based off of this, which is so much valuable knowledge and wisdom, because this isn't just information, this is like knowledge and wisdom based off experience, multiple perspectives, multiple forms of mind technology. But what I'm grasping out of all of this is people don't have an owner's manual.
Oh, they don't.
For their brain. You know,
no, they don't.
Even though it's out there, it's like you're operating through this crazy complex thing that I'm not going to say we completely know how the brain works, but I am going to say we do know how certain things work and how to get certain results. And it's predictable, and it happens over and over and over again. And you see some people learn this stuff and they all suddenly start getting the same results, and other people who don't keep getting the same random results, right? So you can predictably do certain things. So within that owner's manual of what you're talking about here, how does somebody first start off with this? Because you've gone through so much wisdom and knowledge. However, a lot of people will watch this and then they'll go to the next video, right? And it won't stick. Because I really believe in the philosophy of, like, if you want to learn guitar or almost anything, you want to give someone something basic enough where they can go get some sort of result and be like, wow, that did work. So for me, one of the things was learning to use my memory, and I study, like I watched this memory course, and I learned to study 100-digit code forward and backwards, and it was so mind-blowing to me, and it was within an hour. And I was like, this is like an impossibility. I just went through 12 years of school, and then, you know, I didn't go to university at that point, but it was like 4 years after university. I'm somehow 22 or 23 years old, and I've never even been taught how to use my memory. All throughout all of school, never taught anything about my brain and how it works, nothing. And then this guy in 1 hour teaches me to study 100-digit code forward and backwards, and it was very easy because I was taught how the brain worked. So what is something that someone can do in order to start, you know, grasping this power of their mind, that they can be the cause and stop constantly being the effect? Because we're all causes and we're all effects, right? But how do we take control and start being more of the cause? Like, we're never going to be all, but what about if we can get to 80-20 instead of 20-80?
Totally. It's such a great question. So the single easiest place to start is with anchoring. The single easiest, like, after studying literally all of the NLP and all of hypnosis and all the stuff, and then getting to a point where I was like, honestly, anchoring is just so simple.
Let's break anchoring down a little bit more with, like, the law of association.
Okay, perfect. So Pavlov's dogs. So you've probably heard of Pavlov's dogs. Basically, if you haven't, it's an experiment that was done, I think, in the 1900s, and essentially a guy called, I think it was Ivan Pavlov. He essentially had bells for the dogs. So he would feed the dogs, he'd ring the bell, and then they'd eat. And he'd repeated this a number of times and he'd measure the saliva. And then eventually what happened was he took away the food, but he rang the bell, and he noticed that the saliva would still drip more as though they were ready for the food. So he was like, okay, this is causing a reaction. It's the sound that they've attuned to. So what you want to do is understand that you can link anything to anything in the brain. It doesn't matter what it is. There are people that are fallen in love with merry-go-rounds. It's a bizarre thing that they have, but the thing gets linked to the wrong part, right?
It's happening a lot in the world because there's so many different things happening, so they're linking different feelings to different things.
Exactly, and that's what marketers are doing to you, right, all the time. So what you want to do is you want to take, the easiest way to take anchoring would be to find a situation or three where you felt really damn good about yourself. Just felt really good about yourself for no reason whatsoever. And there are nuances to this. You could do a time where you just felt really determined, a time where you felt really confident, or a time you felt really happy. And then what you want to do is you want to learn how to recreate it. The mastery is in learning how to recreate that experience. And what you'll understand when you do it is you'll learn there's a set of strategies that you go through. You've got to do step 1, then you've got to do step 2, then you've got to do steps 3. So for example, to use the example of the guy with the daughter, well, I would say, okay, so sitting down, imagine your daughter's here right now. Well, what would you need to do in this image for the emotion to be elicited? If you're just sitting there playing with her, does that really elicit the emotion?
Yeah.
It's like, well, not really. So what's the piece that really elicits the emotion? Well, it's sitting down and saying goodnight to her and reading a book. And there's something about that that brings up naturally that sense of protection, that sense of fatherliness, all of that stuff. You want to find out what is it for you that uniquely brings out the emotion. So I'll give you a tip. Past achievements is a fantastic one to go for.
Yeah.
Past achievements can be leveraged to create pride very easily because typically an achievement is defined as a situation where you had a goal, a desire, and there was an obstacle.
Yeah.
That's why there's an achievement. Otherwise, it's not an achievement. It's not an achievement if I go to the fridge and I get a water.
That's why life would be so boring if it was just like, I just knew exactly how to do it. I didn't have to overcome anything or learn anything or become
100%.
more. Yeah.
And what you'll find is the successful entrepreneurs are people who have mastered how to face the most insane amounts of pain, and then they've overcome it. And it's true for almost every single entrepreneur you'll meet.
And athlete, and you're just almost looking at any field.
Yeah, exactly. So what is it going to take for you to get through that? It's got to be belief. Belief in yourself is the ultimate weapon. So I would start with achievements. Write down a list of your past achievements, say write down 5 or 10 of them, and then just think about them and find one that really juices you up. You're like, holy shit, I did that.
Yeah.
And learn how to get back in that state.
How crazy is that, right? It's crazy because when we get into these negative states, let's say we're failing, right? Or what I call feedback, because there is no such thing as failure in life.
Totally.
It's just a human-made construct. But we have gotten feedback that we couldn't do the thing yet, right?
Yeah.
So when we get into a cycle of that, we start to believe that that's who we are.
Well,
even though we can look back at our past and actually see all the times that we succeeded and all the proof that we have overcome other challenges. But since that's so far gone from our reticular activating system and all we're thinking about is the now and what's going on, that disappears, right?
Totally. So that's the association dissociation. So that's when it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and something's not working and you're failing and you're saying, I haven't got to do it yet, right? And you have no evidence of it. So what do you lean on? The only thing you can really lean on is the best that you've ever pulled out of yourself. And sometimes you're having to pull the even better out. So you're going to want to have some kind of foundation. So that's why I think past achievements are one of the best places that you can go for that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
And someone's probably sitting there and saying, I don't have any past achievements. I'll say bullshit. I call bullshit on that.
100%.
And if you're thinking that, what that is an indication of is that you have a very active way of being able to talk yourself out of success.
Yeah.
So that's what you want to be really careful of. It's like, oh, I don't have this example, or I don't have this. Well, what you have got is a very active mind, just being very creative and is using that creativity against you. And you want to be really careful about that. Identify it, pay attention to it, and then learn how to recondition that to change the narrative. Because if you change the narrative habitually, then what happens is the identity begins to shift as well, because the narrative becomes new. The way we talk now is after having achieved more things and gone through hell, you end up talking differently to yourself. You end up saying different things, you focus on different things, and it becomes more solidified because you understand the cost of thinking differently.
And like based off of the anchoring as well, you have to also just, like a lot of people be like, oh, this is like, I wouldn't even want to say they're going to say it's woo, but like they can't kind of see this working. But if you were to just look at your life, you can find hundreds of instances where most of the time you're doing this negatively. So you can actually find over and over and over again in your life what triggers you to give you a certain feeling, to make you act a certain way, and you can follow, reverse engineer and follow these back and realize, oh my God, it's because of X.
Totally.
It's like everything he's saying is true, I've just been doing it unconsciously. And you also have things that you do positively, whether it's being around a certain person or X happening in your life, and you get that same feeling as well.
100%.
So it's happening automatically. But
accidentally.
Accidentally. But what you're sharing is how to do this consciously. Systematically.
So the saying is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So what I wanted to do with this was engineer the ultimate system that you could wrap around someone's individual ecology that would allow them to know, a layman, an everyday person, to be able to take the tools and say, I want to be able to pull the best out of me. I want to be able to hack into my own brain and access my own power. So I built a system and made it super simple and super stupid simple, so no one could get it wrong. Beautiful. And show people how to wrap this around themselves so they can ritualize pulling themselves out. Because every entrepreneur has to lay over a structure that they then exist on top of. And entrepreneurs don't realize this for usually like a couple of years. They slowly piece one, two pieces together, and they're like, wait, all of these pieces are the things that allow me to show up inside of the uncertainty that is entrepreneurship. Because as soon as you're creating the future, you're creating the unknown and you're breaking the habit of being yourself. So I wanted to systemize it. So it's all about building a solid system around, and that incorporates preparation, execution, and expansion. Those are the three different domains. You can broaden your whole world into those three domains. Everything that happens outside of business is expansion. Your relationships, which most entrepreneurs completely destroy when they go for business. They completely destroy it. They'll destroy almost all their relationships. Right? Because
I've gone through it.
100%. We all have, right? By mistakes. That's how we learn. But you don't have to. In fact, you realize that it's actually better for you to have access to that world because it fuels your energy. It fuels the 4 levels of energy, right? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So it fuels you up, which you then take that energy, channel that into execution. So it's really, really crucial. So we have preparation, execution, and expansion. So preparation is all of the ritualization that we do to optimize 4 levels of energy: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, to anchor in the identity, to actually, and then to go even further than that. And this is the cool thing, because remember, we said that we have to break the habit of being ourselves, which means we have to actually endure a type of ego death. And so what we do is we really want to do is we want to ritualize systematically the process of ego death. So if we execute ego death during our ritual, then we arrive at the day as a person we've never been before. Now what that means is we have possibilities open to us that we never knew we had before. So I love to do that. I think you actually need to ritualize that inside of performance, and that way you can turn your mornings into a training ground. You actually turn your preparation phase into a training ground to build your identity. So it takes on a whole nother level of metaphorical meaning and the significance, which now you're not just waking up to show up to just get yourself in a good state. You're actually doing it to transform yourself and to step into reality as the version you need to be. And then when you systemize that, you will notice the difference. The single day you don't do it will be the last day you ever don't do it, because as soon as you don't do it, you'll realize, holy crap, I just showed up as this totally different person. I don't even know how the hell I even got through my day. So we systemize that whole thing, we anchor all of it together, and then you go into your execution, you pull off that, you have anchors to pull the state back if you need to, and then you make sure that you're able to switch off, recover, and go and do your expansion. And then you link those things together over and over and over and over and over again. And that becomes the ecosystem that you put around you.
It's incredible, and this is such high level stuff. I just wanted to dive into one thing that you said there, which is about the foundation. As entrepreneurs, when we start out and we don't have these systems in place and we're just going balls to the wall because we got this courage and we're just like, we don't want to work a job and we don't want to do this and we have this dream and blah, blah, blah. And we're just going, you can build. So you can build this and it can work. However, here's what's happened to me and what happens to almost every entrepreneur. You build, and then you realize you're building too high up for the foundation, for the weak foundation you have, and it crumbles. And it's going to crumble every time if these things aren't in place. And I'm actually going through this in my business right now, where I'm being forced to level up because of the expansion of how fast it's grown, and all the things that are happening, and because of my past self and my past identity, who I was, it's not able to support this, which means I'm having to go back down to the foundation and reset things up that I wasn't currently doing and wasn't prepared for within what's happening. But because of these systems that I've started to learn over the years, and because of the understanding of this, I can look at this as not, oh my God, I'm not that person. I'm like, who do I need to be?
100%.
Now I'm going to become that person. I'm going to create this system to become this person, versus the opposite, which is I'm just going to die, which 100%. Is either evolve or die, right?
100%. So,
man, everything that you've said here is so damn powerful. Can you please tell people where they can find you, where they can find your course, or how do people get in touch with you and watch more of your stuff and be around this? Because I believe, like, when we surround ourselves with this, is why I'm listening to audiobooks, 2-3 hours a day most of the time, just constantly brainwashing myself with this to force myself to think this way and force myself to become this.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So we'll put a link. Let's just put some links in there. You can find me on Facebook, Cameron Gallagher. You'll see me there. And at this present time, there's no web, so we'll put the link once we get it up.
But you got Instagram, you got YouTube.
Instagram, yeah,
I'll put all the
Coach
links in the description. Follow Cameron. I had to interview you because the other night when we were talking with everybody, everyone was just like, oh my God, they were all listening because it's unbelievable how like literally 99% of people have never even heard about this stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It goes, there's none of this is in the education system.
Totally.
We're not taught any of this as we grow up. We have no owner's manual. And then out of nowhere, someone comes out of the woodwork and is like, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, what the hell? Like, I need to know more about this.
100%.
Then you just dive down the rabbit hole and you start to realize what the possibilities truly are and how bullshit all the beliefs that you've had about yourself have been, which have kept you where you are.
Completely, and that system does exist. We called it the bold protocol because the idea was for you to be able to show up at your most boldest version of yourself. And like all of the guys that went through that program, it was crazy. I mean, we saw guys the first leaving their jobs, 10 grand a month, 10 grand days, you know, it was awesome to see what happened when people learned how to systematically be their ultimate version of themselves. It was incredible.
That is incredible, man. So guys, if you like this content, leave a like, leave a comment of something you learned from this. Like let me know something you got from this and something that you would like to know more of. What would you like expanded on so I can talk about it in future videos or possibly we can have Cameron on again. So guys, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification button. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.
See you guys.